Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. A lot of programs at the top of the SEC garnering a lot of national media attention, and for good reason, right? Ole Miss looking really good. Jackson Dart putting up some really flashy numbers. Obviously, Nico in this Tennessee offense certainly looking the part. But like clockwork, seemingly every single year, this Missouri program just flying under the radar, not getting a ton of national media buzz. And although it's not as flashy as some of the other programs that we see in the SEC. This is an SEC team that I think checks a lot of boxes in terms of what you're looking for in a conference and national championship contending team. Want to get into what we've seen from this Missouri program throughout the first 3 weeks, kind of dive in to what we saw against Boston College, where I think part of the reason that Missouri's not getting a ton of national media buzz. I think there are a lot of people that probably didn't watch that football game against Boston College, just kind of took a look at the scoreboard at the end of four quarters and kind of assumed it wasn't a great performance from Missouri. And although I don't think it was their A-plus football, you watch every snap of that football game and say that was pretty dominant, especially in the second half in terms of what this Missouri team looked like. But most importantly, they've shown that they check a lot of boxes. I want to get into some of those boxes they check now. Before we do, and as always, one would love to hear from you guys. Again, this is a Missouri team that the boys kind of banging the table for heading into 2024. The amount of support y'all continue to show to the boys, it's been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Let it fly in the comment section. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start with an aspect of this Missouri team that not enough people talk about, and that's the offensive line. Now we're going to talk about the kind of flashy parts of this Missouri program, right? Quarterback Brady Cook, Luther Burden at the wide receiver position. But I look at what holds a lot of teams back in terms of competing for an SEC championship. It's line of scrimmage play. Specifically, do you have an offensive line that can deal with programs like Georgia and Alabama and what they throw at you on the defensive line? I think this Missouri offensive line is one of the best units that you see in the SEC. I think it's one not only experienced, but it's really talented as well. The only offensive lineman that starts on this team that does not have a ton of experience is true sophomore Caden Green, who's been phenomenal for Missouri throughout the first 3 weeks of the season. What I love most about this Missouri offensive line is one, they're a lead in pass protection, right? Only 8 quarterback hurries all season. I think that Boston College pass rush that tore up Florida State week 2, I think that Boston College has a decent pass rush that would test Missouri, and largely Missouri certainly held their own and looked very impressive. But I think secondly, this is an offensive line that can really get it done in the run game as well, and that's something that's really important to Missouri and how they want this offense to look. Yes, you have guys like Brady Cook. You have guys like Luther Burden, but make no mistake about it. There's a reason Coach Drink in this Missouri program went to the transfer portal and grabbed guys like Nate Noel and Marcus Carroll. Like they want to be a balanced, multi-dimensional offense, and that starts with running the football. That outside zone scheme that Missouri likes to run, not only do they have the athletes to run it, but they run it extremely well. And I think there's a little argument to be made that I'd like to see them probably have a little bit more inside zone and power concepts in this run game, because you look at this Missouri offensive line specifically on the inside and at that right tackle spot with Herman Membu. This is an offensive line that can road grade, that can move bodies off the line of scrimmage. They run the football in a lot of different ways. They have that kind of bread and butter look, those outside zone concepts that certainly work. And I think Nate Noel and Marcus Carroll are very good running backs to run those concepts. The offensive line and pass protection and in the run game, it's really solid. And I don't think enough people talk about that. Now, I think secondly, you look at this Missouri offense, they're much more multidimensional in the passing attack than a lot of people give them credit for. You look at a team like Arizona with Noah Fafita and T-Mac, that's an offense that is very one-dimensional, right? If the ball's not going to T-Mac, Arizona is not having a ton of success in the passing game. I feel like people assume that this Missouri offense is just like that. I mean, you look after 3 weeks, Luther Burden is not even the leading receiver. Now, I fully expect Luther Burden to be the leading receiver once he's obviously dealing with I think he was sick in week 2. After 12, 13 games, Luther Burden's going to lead this team in receiving. That's kind of the point that I'm trying to get to. That being said, there's a lot of other weapons on this Missouri offense that don't get enough attention, right? Obviously, Brady Cook, phenomenal quarterback, a guy that's always improved throughout his career at Missouri. Look at a guy like Theo Weiss, who, again, I don't think a lot of people remember, was a five-star prospect coming out of high school. And over the last 2 years within Missouri, he's starting to kind of look like that five-star prospect we thought he was. I mean, he has the ability to be a wide receiver one in this Missouri offense. You start sprinkling in guys like Mookie Cooper or Joshua Manning or Marquise Johnson, guys that are explosive difference makers for this Missouri offense. And then Brett Norfleet at tight end, strong offensive line, a quarterback that's a difference maker, and a veteran quarterback. And we've seen a lot of veteran quarterbacks have a ton of success. Think about guys like Bo Nix and Michael Penix last year. And then the weapons on the outside with a balanced offense. You look at this Missouri offense and say, I don't think there's a box that is left unchecked in terms of what you're looking for from this Missouri offense. And, we kind of thought that heading into 2024. Now, I think the big storyline for Missouri was obviously you lose your defensive coordinator. I think you lose some legitimate difference makers on the defensive line. The one thing that was, at least me personally, holding me back from really getting on the Missouri hype train, I think we're still looking for that definitive answer, but we've liked what we've seen, is the difference makers on the defensive line. Like, is Missouri elite on the defensive line like we see Georgia and Alabama? That's probably the big question that we have. They hit on Chris McClellan. Like, I think the biggest takeaway throughout the first three games is that Chris McClellan looks like that top 100 national prospect that we thought he was when he committed to Florida out of high school. And Missouri's had a lot of success going to the transfer portal, and whether it's finding guys at lower levels that come up and play really good in the SEC, or guys that were really talented out of high school but haven't quite put it together yet, whatever Missouri's doing in the transfer portal personnel department in terms of their evaluations, the hit rate for Missouri in the transfer portal has been very high, and it looks to be high once again. Like Chris McClellan on the inside, that seems like a hit. Johnny Walker Jr., I thought really good last year. He's kind of continuing from what you've seen. I was really concerned when Missouri lost Darius Smith for the season because he kind of looked like that elite pass rusher that Missouri was looking for. You're seeing some good things from Zion Young. Now, I think you still want a guy to really step up and be that Darius Robinson that we saw from last year. That being said, throughout the first 3 weeks, you're seeing a couple candidates that we could feel really good about. I think they're loaded at linebacker with experience and depth. And then the secondary, continuing to take the football away. Talk about another hit to Reno Pride Jr. coming over from Clemson. He certainly seems like a hit as well. I look at this Missouri team and say one thing that's always set Missouri apart is they're complete. Like, do they have the high school talent that Georgia might have trotting out? No, they don't recruit to that level. That being said, they do a really good job balancing getting guys from the high school ranks, using the transfer portal, but I think most importantly, player development. In a world of college football where you see a lot of teams have some flashy talent, but not necessarily complete depth charts, Missouri, I think, has that top-end talent. Guys like Ramon Membu on the offensive line, guys like Luther Burden on the outside, but I also think they check so many boxes from a depth chart and roster construction standpoint. So I look at this Missouri team and say, although they're not getting the national media attention because they don't have a bona fide, I wouldn't even say that because I think guys like Brady Cook and Luther Burden are NFL caliber dudes. They don't get a ton of national media attention. It's not always flashy in terms of what you see on the scoreboard, but I really do think there's a reason that if there were only a couple of teams that really pushed teams like Georgia last year, it was that Missouri team. Really, really excited to see what they can do as they start ramping up that schedule. Obviously, playing Vanderbilt, believe you're off, and then you go on the road to Texas A&M. Again, what separates a lot of teams in the SEC is, do you have the offensive line to block up some of the elite defensive lines? I think the biggest storyline is Missouri does. Really fun team. Wanted to hop on, talk about what we've seen from this Missouri program throughout the first 3 weeks. 2.8 yards per carry on defense, number 23 in the country, sacking the quarterback 9.4% of the time. Those were the biggest question marks we had. Missouri seems to be answering those questions. We'll close it down there. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later.